Sinja her how doing.
Hello, hello, hello. It's so great to meet you all today and to have a moment to get together to discuss about our common passion. The three of you are amazing singers and good friends of mine also. And I thought it was really a great opportunity to know a little bit more about your musical vision. Even if I'm used to talk to each one of you in French, let's do it in English today to give the opportunity to a maximum of people to understand it. So I think it's really interesting to have your point of view on the subject of European jazz and on singing jazz and on vocal world. And so I knew you were born and raised in Finland.
That's
And
right.
you've studied music in Belgium and had your career mostly also in Belgium. Maybe it's going to change soon. Who knows? Christina, you were born and raised in Switzerland, and you've studied music, and your musical career also was in the Netherlands, mostly, but also all over. And François, you are Belgian, and you were also for a few years in the US. And I think it's important in your musical background, but you are going to explain it. So first of all, could you introduce yourself in a few words with a bit more of details than what I just said? Yes, François?
All right.
Yes.
Hey, my name is François VAIANA. I'm a singer, a jazz singer in Brussels. Been doing this for quite a while now. I direct bands. I directed the band called Bloomende People for a while. Now I'm working on a solo project called Nino, Uncut. And then with Anu, we've been singing with the Brussels Vocal Project for quite some years now, a good 10 years, I think. We've been doing projects for a while with the Brussels Vocal Project. And then, yeah, I'm called sometimes to write lyrics for people or to perform with other people. And then I teach, I think, as we all do. Yeah. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, great. Anu.
Yes, so my name is JUNNONEN. I've been living in Belgium for almost 25 years.
Wow.
Where I studied jazz singing. I have my personal artistic project, which is called JUNN. Nowadays, I have released 4 albums with my own music. And I love to sing many different styles, from folk music to pop to contemporary music, jazz, different things. I've also composed some music for theater productions and work with Brussels Vocal Project, which is a very precious project since it's all about voices and collaborations with different singers, musicians, composers. And I also love teaching.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. Christina.
Yeah, my name is Christina FUCHS. I'm, well, born in Switzerland, but I live in Amsterdam now. Also a long time, maybe almost 25 years could be. I should calculate. And I studied singing in The Hague, jazz singing, but and I had worked with different projects or work with different projects that are always kind of on the verge between jazz, improv, classical music, and also folk music oriented things. So the last big project I did, I have also a little trio in Switzerland, and last autumn we did a long project that was about the dialect of the Jura and the old folk songs that are still sung in the patois of the Jura. So there's a sort of connection between Swiss folk music and improvisation and jazz and composed music that has been going on maybe for the last 10 years. I've worked with a lot of contemporary classical ensembles, and also had a jazz trio and a quintet before. A little bit playing all over the place. And I teach in Antwerp. That's how I know Barbara and the Belgium scene a little bit. I teach in Amsterdam on a Indian rhythm course, and there's a connection to Indian singing where I traveled twice to learn. And I also teach in Utrecht this year.
So many things. Wow,
Yeah.
impressive. So all the three of you studied jazz in a conservatory. Do you think, well, did it determine the singer you are today? And are the teachers you had important in your actual vision of music and voice?
I would say yes, definitely. As far as to my parcours, I think I spent like from my 14, 15, the first 10 years in this kind of jazz tunnel that I didn't want to know of existence of any other music styles. And then later on, I opened up a bit to more different styles. And of course, I mean, I was also brought up with classical music and folk music. But so it has definitely, this jazz background has shaped the singer that I am today, and will always be, I think. Although the music I make today is not so much in the jazz, it's more, I would consider it more like experimental pop music that I do today. But it has definitely, jazz is important part of my my musicianship. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, same for me.
Yeah.
Go
sorry.
ahead, Christina.
Yeah, it's funny to see when I think of my conservatory time that I certainly started as a total jazz addict. I came actually from classical music, and I had discovered jazz a couple of years before, and so I was totally into Ella and Sarah, and I was a hard bop fan too. So I was when I came to the conservatory, and The Hague was a pretty, let's say, traditional school. I was really like very happy. But it's funny to see how through the years I also I needed the resistance, first of all, of the material itself to develop my skills. So some stuff needs a lot of work, and it's maybe stuff that I'm not really using anymore, right? But it just gave me sort of opportunity to hone my abilities. But also then at some point, I think it became the conservatory vision became something to sort of shape my artistic personality against. So I'm in the sense of saying, I'm not going to do what you do because I have my own thing. And in a way that was maybe even, then it's necessary to have a school with a pretty clear vision, so you can go against it. At that time, sometimes I maybe experienced it as a conflict, but in a way it's like growing up, maybe also, that you just need to get more independence. And I found other musicians on the, I mean, one of the most important things maybe of studying on a conservatory is that you find other musicians to play with, and you can develop your music in your own time. You can develop your music with them. So it's also like a pool. And the teachers were very important in the same function. So in bringing material to hone my skills, but also in saying, no, I'm not going to do what you are doing, or sort of to be in a constructive, like you have when you get into puberty with your parents. You get into the sort of musical puberty at some point on school, maybe, and I think it's a healthy process.
And I think you studied with Jean Lee.
I studied with Rachel Gould.
Okay.
And then Jean Lee, and I had workshops with Norma Winston and Laura Newton. I think those four singers were very important. And Jean was somebody that we so that was part of the rebellious movement. A little bit of we knew that she wanted to have a teaching position in Europe, and Suzanne and I and some other colleagues from the singing department really wanted her to come and teach in The Hague. So we were really pushing that, fighting for that. Yeah.
And it happened.
Yes.
François?
It was amazing. She was amazing.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And when just a little, afterthought. So Jean was, I mean, then I was what would now be a master student, and so I had Jean in my fifth and sixth year of study, and Jean was amazing. Really, just the whole personality also. But sometimes she just wouldn't show up for the lessons, because something else happened in her life, and she was just late to it. But at that, if you're in the fifth or sixth year, it doesn't matter so much. Sometimes one lesson every 6 months, one lesson that really hits the spot is enough. It can give you enough material to go on for 6 months and work your thing, And but we also joke that we would write someday we would write a tune called "Waiting for Jean."
Great. Okay. Great title, actually.
That's true.
François?
Yes, I think the studies definitely influence what you do. I think for my part, the way I lived my studies was I had a bit my own universe prior to school, which was not necessarily jazz. Of course, my father's a jazz musician, so jazz has always been there, in my upbringing as a kid and a teenager. But then I also listened to many different styles of music, from R&B, hip hop, and all things that kind of a teenager kind of likes. And then when you arrive in school, then I think you get into this stylistic thing and this language that's very important to know and to learn how to do. But then I feel school for me was really a process of, in French we say artisan. Like I feel like it makes you a better artisan. But then whoever artist is in you, I guess it's in school, but also a lot of outside of school, and the experiences you have, musical adventures you have with other people. So I feel like I'm very grateful for school for making me the artisan. How do you say this in English? The craftsman.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Craftsman.
I'm very grateful for school for giving me all the chops to be a great craftsman, but I'm also grateful for everything I did outside of school as well. Of course, school is not just making you a good craftsman, it also, because you meet people with who you play till this day, like you were saying, Kristina, and then certain exchanges with teachers have like a very deep meaning. When you're done with school, then you have to find a balance between who you were before and the whole process of the things you learned in school, and to just be in touch with your artist again. But of course, I'm grateful for everything the school has given me, the teachers I met, and what they definitely push you to be a better you and a better artist. So I'm happy for that.
Great. Okay. And what represents the tradition in music for all of you? So it could be jazz tradition or folklore or anything, or both of them. I mean,
I would say a first word that comes to my mind is kind of identity in a way. I started approaching jazz, not from the tradition of jazz, but from the Finnish modern jazz at that moment. The way people would mix Finnish folk music with jazz. It was always about the freedom that you take in this traditional music. And I much later I discovered Ella the rest. And I have to say, it took me a while to make it a part of my like something that I really like, because I experienced something very strong with the maybe it's a way in the northern countries that we make music, that we make jazz music in a very free way. It's not starting from this tradition, American tradition, so it's like almost as if everything is possible. Like it's just like expressing yourself by improvising or singing a folk song, but in a free way, and constructing the sound around it. So there was like this, yeah, really kind of freedom to approach, and then I discovered, okay, that's somehow it's connected to jazz, and okay, and then later I discovered the jazz, the American jazz tradition. What was the question?
Well, what represents the tradition for you?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So you
yeah,
kind of
I would say it's a
answered.
kind of identity that you that you absorb, and then yeah, the influences, the ones that you the artist you fall in love with, and what you kind of observe from them, and it comes a part of your your approach to making music.
Yeah, for
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so nice that you are sitting next to each other. I want someone, you know.
Yeah.
We're lucky. Yeah.
You can talk to.
Somebody else?
I can, so I have to think of a little story. So that's not a really straight answer to your question. But when I had finished my studies and I had published my first CD, and I was gigging, and so I had my artistic thing, but I also did other projects that were more classical music and contemporary music oriented, and also had a lot of, like, let's say, more extended techniques, meaning like more weird sounds. But my parents have a little apartment in the Swiss mountains, so I often go there for holidays. And I was there alone, and I bumped into a group of people who were also hiking in the mountains. So we hooked up together, and so they were like asking, so who are you and what do you do? And oh, you live in Amsterdam, so Swiss people. And then of course they found out I was a singer. And I don't know if you know, I mean, you all know this, but sometimes when people find out you're a singer, they go like, oh, sing something, you know, and you just go like, what?
Nightmare.
Okay.
Nightmare moment, you know, which is weird, because it's supposed to be the thing that you love the most in life. And then if somebody says sing something, you sort of freeze. But it happened. So I was like, nah, come on, you know, no holiday and blah, blah, blah. And then there was a little funny trade-off. We decided to have dinner together, and one of the people, because I also say, well, what are you going to do if I sing? What will you do then? Oh, I will tell a story. So that one of them told a traditional story, like a legend or something. And then the moment came, we were somewhere outside sitting on the bench, fantastic view. It would be very kitschy in the movie. And and so they said, so, you know, now you. And I was like, what am I gonna do? You know, am I gonna do like a lullaby of birdland, shooby dooby, or am I gonna do one of those classical songs? And I was really lost, because I thought, I can't just do something that if I do something that I do in my daily life, it will not, I was afraid that it was not going to connect to those people I've just met, and that they were going to go like, oh, okay, interesting, you know, or something like that. So I was really lost. And then I remembered at some point, I remembered an old Swiss folk song. They're just the one that is most known in Switzerland. And so I started to sing that one. And of course, I just knew like the first and the second couplet, but they knew it. And so they helped, you know, they jumped in, like they listened for the first 2 rounds, and then somebody knew the 3rd couplet and somebody knew the 4th, and then somebody knew another folk song that I was like, oh, I know that one. And before we knew it, we were singing there for an hour, because always someone knew a song. And I remembered that this was part of a repertoire that I had been singing with my parents in the car when we went to holidays on long rides, and that I had completely forgotten about. And then later on, of course, you didn't want to be found dead in the Swiss traditional corner. That was more like a humpapa holladihe touristic thing. You know, and so I pushed that far away, and I went to do my jazz thing and my artistic thing, and I was not connected to that world anymore. And that moment of singing there with those people and of really connecting. So I tried it a couple of times in other places in Switzerland, and always the same thing happened. People started smiling and started singing along, and it was not maybe not a musical, you know, an artistic peak of whatever kind of musical criteria you might have, but it was togetherness and connection, and sort of remembering that we did learn those songs. And it was a fascinating experience, and it really changed my life, my musical life.
Wow.
So I don't know if that is that's not my only personal musical tradition, but it was something that connected to something very old that I didn't know about, and where I thought, oh my God, we have this, you know, great American songbook that I've been running after for the last, you know, when I studied, and for 10 years maybe, and actually we have maybe a great Swiss songbook or Flemish songbook or a Dutch songbook or a European songbook. It has been there for many years, hundreds of years, and that we have sort of pushed away because it's been claimed by nationalistic politics or touristic stuff, or a certain scene that we don't feel connected to. And maybe we should just, at that moment, I thought maybe we should reclaim our territory and make our music ours again.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
François?
Yeah, I'm thinking for myself. First of all, I really relate to the thing you were saying, Christina, about people asking you to sing, and you're like, what am I going to sing? And if I sing something, it's definitely not going to connect. I've been there so many times, and I totally relate to this. It's a very strange feeling. But as far as myself, so my mother is Belgian. I was raised in Belgium. I was also raised outside of Belgium, but I know Belgium is a particular place as far as tradition because, well, I come from the French-speaking side of Belgium, and I think it's been 3 generations that people have been speaking French. So before that, my grandparents' parents were speaking Walloon only. And so it's a particular place where we've been completely, we're like, our tradition has been taken away from us in a way. So we are like a group of people, and it's hard for us to connect with some kind of tradition. So we find a way, I think, to create your own folklore, to create your own tradition with the things you gather. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what nourished me in a way. And I've always been kind of not envious, but in awe with people who are like deeply rooted in some kind of tradition, because it's not something we usually have in Belgium because of this history of losing our culture, losing not really our culture, but our language and a big part of our culture. Anyway, so that has always been a question for me, like what is tradition for myself? But then also I was lucky enough with my family to have moved a lot. So I lived in the States when I was a kid. I also lived in Burkina Faso in West Africa for 4 years when I was a teenager. Oh, yeah. And then I went back to Burkina. I lived in Belgium. I went a lot to Sicily because my father's from Sicily, to the village. And so you end up, but I think it's a general thing in life, not just musical, but you end up creating your own language, your own references. That's a mix of all these things. And I feel like for a long time, I had to find a way to put all these together and say, okay, this is who I am. This is my identity. which is a mix of all these different things. But yeah, it wasn't an easy process for me. So I guess tradition for me is kind of like what Anne was saying, all these different things that you learn throughout your life. It's not just a cultural tradition, but it's also, I mean, cultural tradition based on a country, but it's also just like a general cultural tradition. I hope it answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally connect to what you say about Belgian non-tradition or folklore. But
It's a strange thing, no?
yeah, absolutely. I think there is something, but we are not connected to it at all. Yeah.
Or we try to
Right.
create something, like there's a lot of folk, there's a big folk movement, I think, in Belgium. I'm not really familiar with it. I don't know, maybe you are more familiar with the folk movement in Belgium, but it's also trying to recreate something that is not there in a way.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
strange. It's a strange feeling.
KRISTINA?
I've been doing a project. Yeah, I've been doing a project. So last autumn about with songs that, because I think it's in the Swiss Jura is a bit the same thing. They're speaking French, but actually his grandparents and great grandparents have been speaking patois, which is completely not French, which is a really and they were forbidden to speak it, and it was taken away from them. And it's something that is very typical to the French part of Switzerland. So there's been a sort of movement of let's all speak French. And so this friend of mine has, the cellist of my trio has dug out some old songs that are still in patois. And it's funny when we sing them or play them that people don't really understand them, and it has vanished. But there's still a little bit is left. So there are some, like there are some connections or some words or some parts of the text they understand. So it's very funny to see what happens there. And on the other hand, it's also weird because we got invited to play at a sort of linguists congress of the University of Neuchâtel or something like that, because that's obviously the only people who actually really know how to speak the language are some PhD, some doctors of linguistics who have just studied something that is virtually almost dead. So it's a weird thing, right?
And what is the place of tradition and modernity in your music then? If there is a place for tradition, or if there is a place for modernity, or if you ever thought about it, or...
What is define modernity?
Oh, you can define it for yourself. I mean, the definition of modernity could be different for each one of us.
It's a tough one
Yes.
to answer because again, it's all about defining words. Words mean different things for different people, and tradition for me is not what tradition for you are. And so it's like, first you have to define what your personal tradition and folklore is, and is it there in your music? So I guess with what I said before, as far as like the influences you get and the tradition you create for yourself, yeah, definitely it's there. But if we're talking about traditional music, folk music, I can't say it's in my music. No.
I think that
sorry, I'm interrupting. And about traditional jazz, do you think it's in your music?
Most likely it's more in my music, for sure, because I've studied it in school, because I've listened to it with my parents. This would be the tradition that I inherited from being curious as a kid, or being shown things as a kid. So I guess this tradition is there. I'm sorry, I will shut my phone off.
Yeah. So I think this became your tradition, François, even if you are not there anymore.
It's kind of like it's not an inherited tradition, but an acquired tradition in a way. You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. KRISTINA, sorry, I interrupted you.
No problem. I think for me, what this question makes me think about is that I think that in a way, jazz for me is not so much a style of music. It's more a working. It's more a way of working that takes something that a lot of times. I mean, if we're not talking about originals, so our own composition. So, but if we or maybe even then that, but a lot of times jazz takes something and transforms it into something else, into something more personal. And for example, I mean, even traditional jazz would take a song from a film or from a musical and transform it into a jazz standard where it was played completely differently than it was played in the musical, and reharmonized and transposed and stuff. So in a way, I think if you look at jazz as a tool, or as a work, as a, I can't say the word, on the way of working, or then it means that you take something that is a part of, that I take something that's part of my personal tradition, whatever that, if that's now Swiss folk music or something that I have acquired through my musical life, and it transforms it into something that is very much personal, and that in that sense it's modern. So it's maybe not modern in the sense of having a lot of electronic beats or whatever, because that, but it could be for somebody else, but maybe not for me, because I'm not really in that world. But in that sense, I think jazz is not really a style, but it's more it's more a way of working. And it could, then you could come into, if you transform something traditional into something personal and modern, then the outcome could be any style.
So it's more like a philosophy of music for you.
Yeah, it's a philosophy, or really a way of working at, and it means that I'm not trying to do a cover of something, and not doing an interpretation of a, because in classical music, I mean, in a way people do that too, but I would classify that more as interpretation of a work. And in pop or jazz, you could also have a cover band that would not, to try to do something as accurately as possible, or the way it has already been done, or as historically accurate as possible, which has its own complete value. But it would not, jazz for me means that it got a piece of repertoire goes through a kind of transformation, and then comes out as something else than it went in. And it can be really something else.
Yeah. Anu, you want to
Yes, I
talk about it?
can absolutely follow that idea. And I think also it's when you make music from this from a jazz, how I would say, I had it very clear in my head, now it's gone. Yeah, it's a way of approaching music. It's if you work on improvisation for a long time in your life, then you create this kind of freedom, a freedom to approach music that I think will never leave you after that. And it's about the whatever style you go into later. I think it also defines the way you approach it, and the content, the possibilities, also the like you said, Kristina, the way of working, the way of looking into material, this richness of the way of like approaching it from so many different angles that you get when you study jazz music.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. So for the three of you, so let's talk a little bit more about jazz and American jazz and European jazz. So according to you, what are the main characteristics of European jazz, and how do they differ from American jazz, if you make any distinction between the two styles?
I think it's really hard to be very generalistic about it, because jazz is so diverse.
To be what?
Right?
Sorry, it was interrupted.
To be very generalistic about
Generalistic.
it. Yeah, so I think it's because it's such a diverse field that it's very, and also there's, you know, there has been a lot of moving back and forth, European musicians going to the States and American musicians coming here. So I think that it's very hard to classify. I mean, the cliche thing you could say is that American jazz can be blacker, you know, in some ways. I don't know if that's an okay thing to say at all. It's more African, and I think it's a lot of times can be more rhythmical. But again, I mean, that it's a very problematic statement to generalize it so much. And of course, I mean, some European jazz can be more influenced by people coming from a more classical background. But I mean, in America, you also had the third stream. So it's yeah, it's really hard to say that. But intuitively, I would think there's a. I mean, if you look at somebody like, let's say, two of my big heroes, Gene Lee and Norma Winston, there is such a clear American quality to Gene Lee, and there's such clear European quality to Norma Winston. It's very hard to qualify what it is, you know, without falling into all the traps of generalizing stuff that, you know, it's just simply not true.
Yeah,
I think there are scenes, but not necessarily based on country, but maybe on cities. Like you have, you know, Paris, London, Brussels, New York, New Orleans, you know, California. These are all maybe different scenes, but again, it's very moving, especially now, like, because the two people you were mentioning are in a way our you know, the people that came out with music before us, but this generation, I find it's very intertwined. It's hard to answer it, to be honest.
Yeah, what comes up to my mind is if you just consider singing, the way we sound. I think there's a big part of our cultural background that defines what kind of voice we have, how we use our voice, because it comes from our parents and our grandparents and grandparents. So like for example, me, in Finland, almost everybody sings with a head voice, like a very clear sound, and for me it's very hard to sound like a soul singer, because this is not in my cultural heritage. Of course I can learn and try to sound like that, but really the cultural baggage that we have, I think it defines the sound quite a lot, and that maybe that's why European, if you like, very in a cliche way, you put a European jazz or jazz singing in a box, it has more of that kind of sound, which is not so.
But again, it depends, because if you go to Italy, people have more a tradition of this classical kind of voice, and I find Italian singers in general have something more less airy, like you're saying.
Yes.
So it really depends. But I know what you're saying, though. I kind of follow you. Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's such a broad question, jazz, and then I don't know.
And for me, there always has been something about the groove. Like I think the European jazz grooves in a different way than American jazz. Every time I hear Americans playing, I'm like, okay. So it's like we have developed something else with our traditions, our backgrounds, to make music from this free approach of jazz, but still the American way of grooving is, we're not even close to it. I
It's
have
just
a
different.
feeling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Rhythm is really something, huh?
Yeah, I guess it's also the fact that in the States they really have this big tradition of playing in church, and
Yeah.
a lot of people were brought up learning music in churches and playing the gospel and all those musics. I mean, that's one scene in the States, and I guess of course that shapes their tradition and how they view rhythm and groove. Same for, I guess, people who grew up in the Appalachia that have a certain type of voice, or the people, I don't know. So
Yeah.
we're back to this tradition.
Especially singers. I mean, that's really, as also what Anu said. I mean, the way the traditional church music, gospel shaped the voice ideal of American singing. It's just unique. It's not the same in Europe. Sure. But it's remarkable. I mean, in a way, also like you said. I mean, the previous generation, and in that sense, maybe record labels are a thing of the past. But if you look at record labels, at European record labels, how they also, I mean, they almost programmatically shaped. It's something like ECM, or also the Norwegian, like Jazzland or something. That they're really shaping a sort of European vision of how jazz sounds. But in a way, it's also, I mean, everything has become so accessible that it's almost, it has, the socials and internet has become a tool by itself. So, I mean,
it's a big mix.
If Louis Cole, if Louis Cole posts a crazy video somewhere in the States, everybody here sees it right away, right? So it's just, everything spreads incredibly fast.
Yeah, it's another
it's
time.
a good thing. Yeah.
So, Christina, you were talking about two of your biggest influences or mentors, or so. Would you like to name some of your musical influences, both from singers and instrumentalists?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I have sort of phases that I go through, right? So it's like sometimes I'm right now, I'm just listening day and night. I'm almost imitating my daughter with her Bluetooth headphones, listening to music all the time. And right now I'm listening to Shankar Mahadevan, like the singer of the Shakti band of John McLaughlin. I'm just listening to him day and night. But there's been like a phase before where I listened to and not different stuff, and I mean there has been 1 or 2 years that I listened to Miles only. Yeah, so it's or I was a really big Art Blakey fan. I still am, but I mean there was maybe 1 or 2 years I just only listened to Art Blakey and all the people that played with him and made their own records. There's some great classical music. I listened to Purcell and Dowland. I don't know. It always goes in phases, right? And it shapes the way you. It shapes the way you perceive the rest of the music. But I can shift then when you start listening to something else.
The others?
Yeah, I will try to name a few. I think one of my first biggest influence in jazz was Cannonball Adderley, because I started playing jazz with the soprano saxophone, and then I moved to alto saxophone, and so the first things I didn't know were I had classical lessons, because in my city in Finland there was no way of studying jazz music, but so I had classical lessons. But I had this one person that I knew who was teaching a bit jazz. So she a saxophonist, a lady. She taught me some solos of Cannonball. So that has always been till today like a big love. Betty Carter is definitely one of those for me, Nancy Wilson. And then Sitzel Andersen, Lena Willemark.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then maybe today, what I've been listening lately a lot is Caroline Shaw. This contemporary
love her.
singer.
Yes.
Very, does many different things. So.
And Björk isn't one of your influence?
Definitely, yes.
I mean, if we're talking outside of jazz, then
Yeah,
it's like a whole.
Yeah, it's big event.
No, but I think that for Anu, it's kind of label also, you know, that Björk is one of her influence in the music she's doing. So
yeah, that's in a way I've been I think one period of my life I was listening a lot to Björk, but now it's a bit a while ago. But yes, definitely there is something very strong in that influence that has stayed. Yeah,
maybe it's because we were together at a concert of her.
Maybe.
Then I'm doing a kind of association.
When was this and why was I not invited?
It was in Ghent a few years ago.
I think I remember.
During the summer.
Yeah.
We were at the other side of Belgium in Libramont, driving to Ghent and going back the same evening to Libramont. So you can...
Troopers.
Totally.
François?
In the jazz field, I have to say Nina Simone has been my biggest influence because I just love a storyteller, and I think she's for me the most intense storyteller I've ever heard. So I have to say she has been a pretty big influence for me. But of course, I love everybody else from old school to new school. Caroline Shaw, of course, I've been into her a lot lately. But I love all the big names, the Ellas, the Billie Holidays. And I have to say, I listened a lot to Duke Ellington and to Billy Strayhorn. I think their music also was something that I really got into for a long time. All the albums of Duke and all the compositions of Billy is something that I love the relationship between words and music, and I just think it's some of the classiest things that has ever been done as far as jazz music. For me, of course, it's completely subjective. Let's see. Bobby McFerrin, I think, was the first CD I've had as a kid. Simple Pleasures, and I think this shaped me for sure. That was the first CD we had at home, and I listened to it over and over again. Yeah, that's for the jazz, I guess. Yeah, things I listen the most to. Then Björk, my Björk period for sure.
It doesn't have to be like jazz. I mean, it's totally open. Your influences could be from any style.
I mean, I was a hip hop and R&B teenager. I was one of those guys. I feel like in Belgium, there was like two schools in high school, the ones that listened to rock and grunge. I'm from the 90s. And the ones who listened to R&B and hip hop. And I was definitely an R&B hip hop kind of guy. So I listened to many things from there. Many producers, many singers, rappers. This, I think, also influenced me for sure. This teenage folklore.
Yeah.
Good.
Did you rap yourself?
I've never rapped. No, I was never. No, I never. Every time I tried to rap, I always knew it was not for me. I'm like a corny rapper. No, I would never do that. But I like spoken word material, and I love the singing soulful and R&B stuff. That for sure. Yeah, but I never rapped. No. I tried, but then it's like, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
You know when something is not for you. But I listened to it like, my whole teenage years for sure.
Well,
so interesting when you sing. Sorry, when you say about rap and Nina Simone, that it's really people with a message right?
Mhm.
I mean, Nina Simone was like a total activist
Yes.
in her texts, and
Yes.
so are a lot of rappers, and I think that's an interesting thing as well.
For sure. I think I'm
Little
heavily
sidetrack.
heavily influenced by this. People with messages or that are deeply connected with the words they're saying. I mean, it doesn't have to be just on an activist point of view. Just like Jacques Brel is also someone that I absolutely adore for the same reasons. How their relationship with the words and how they come across with the emotional connection with what they're saying is definitely something that touches me deeply.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of singer.
There's such a big difference between, you know, the regular, let's say, regular song texts that are about love and broken hearts and betrayal and stuff like that. And then on the other side, you have the more song texts that are much more, if you want to say, activist or political,
Mhm.
or have more content about. And
But then again, there's this song that I initially don't like, which is Feelings. I don't know if you know this standard. And then there's a version of Nina Simone singing Feelings, and it's the most beautiful thing I've ever
Yeah.
heard. And I initially I
Yeah.
really don't like that song, and then I'm like, okay, like that's also something. It's like how you create a moment with the material that's given.
Yeah.
Mm.
Sorry, Barbara, I didn't want to take over your interview.
No, actually, I was also going to ask about the lyrics you write, and do you feel it's important to have some texts with kind of engagement, or so? It was into it.
Okay.
Straight to the point. So I think the three of you are composers, and we don't have time now to really talk first about melody, about harmony, about rhythm, but I would like to make a mix of all of the three subjects, like melody, harmony, and rhythms. And I would like to know, how would you describe, I mean, where is the focus in your music? So do you first think about the text? Do you first think about the melody? Do you have some chord progressions, or is the rhythm as important as the rest? So where is the focus for you?
I think for me, this it's something that is developing all the time. It's very different how I write music now than like 10 years ago. I think nowadays, I mean, I think for everybody, despite of where they come from and then the studies, and there's always, it kind of, you move to a certain direction that you need to go. For me today, I basically just want to try to write good songs. That's something that I'm really, that's my challenge. Like how to write a good song with as little elements as possible. So melody is very important. I'm a big ABBA lover, so it's all about good melodies and like, yeah, I think that's the most amazing thing, if you can have this melody then that connects with the lyric and it matches, and then that you don't even need much material. That if you can say it with like, few verses and one refrain, and then if the message is there, that's for me how do you say, that's my game. What I'm trying to develop at the moment. Yes, maybe somebody else wants to continue, so I have time to think.
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't mind continuing because I'm in the same kind of thing. I think my focus is definitely the lyrics, what I'm saying, what I want to say, and everything has to nourish a message or something I'm trying to come across. So whether it's harmony, melody, rhythm, it's always about what fits best what I'm trying to say or that emotion I'm trying to convey. Usually for me, it starts with rhythm and voice, and then I build around it and I kind of, either simplify or make it more interesting, surprising. So yeah, that would be my process. I think lyrics and text, because I think I'm trying to be, when I sing my songs, I think I consider myself more as a singer-songwriter first and foremost, and like a composer. But I think what I'm trying to think about is when I'm gonna perform them, am I going to be present, and am I going to be at the present time saying what I have to say? So I'm trying to always think of that and think of is the person listening to what I'm saying, are they going to get it from the first listen, or do they have to listen to it like many times before getting it? So I'm also trying to think of that experience of being on stage and sharing that with the public. That's kind of my focus when I write, thinking of stage and performance. Yeah.
KRISTINA, you want to say something
Yeah,
about it?
yeah, it's complex matter. I think when I started out, I was writing, when I was writing songs, I was always at the piano. So I was always a lot of playing and singing at the same time. And I am not a good piano player, but I liked to play a lot. And then sometimes the most interesting songs would actually, or the most, there would happen something if I actually made a mistake, or I played something that I didn't want to play, and I was like, whoa, oh, what's that? Oh, that sounds interesting, and then develop something from there. So in a way, I think when I came into jazz, harmony became very important, and I was very, very fascinated by harmony and the sort of tension it could create. But then I started, and I tried to write from both sides. So to write lyrics to music that already existed, or to write music to poems that already existed, and or write both from myself, and start with one, and so just trying out things. But I feel it has changed, the way of writing has changed as we get more comfortable with music programs. Then it offers also tools that to write stuff that I would not necessarily be able to play while I sing, or and so in that sense, in a way, I can try out more rhythmical things that are, and I reduced a bit on the harmonic. In a way, when I write more on I started to write a little bit more in like MuseScore or garage band, and then I can't actually really theoretically make up the chords, so it's a little bit, it has transformed a bit, and I'm trying to adapt some of the rhythmical stuff that I've been busy with in the whole Indian context, but then not make it Indian or not make it too complex. So that can be interesting, and I think I always have to force myself a bit to actually then make, when everything is said and done, to make some space for the lyrics, because I kind of forget about them, and then I think like, oh wait, there's some text that I wanted to come, and because it actually is important, but it's just, in a way, in that sense, I think I'm more. I tend to forget sometimes a bit that I'm a singer who can sing text. Yeah.
Okay, so interesting. You see how different it is from one person to the
I want
other.
to add that also, if I'm playing with the band, I like to think of their experience with the material that I'm bringing, and to have propositions, but also leave room for them to come up with their own idea of what I'm bringing as material. So that is also a focus that I have when I write, and when I arrange then for a band, is it going to be fun for them to play this music or not? And I try to think of everybody's experience with the music. That's something that I'm focused on as well.
Mm-hmm. And what is the role of improvisation in your music?
In my music, in my personal artistic project, there's no improvisation. I think it has my way of writing music and performing it has grown into this more like just performing songs. Yeah, somehow for me, that's improvisation is something that I love to do. I love to work on it, especially with students. I think it's very important to for all the singers I work with, from even the small ones from 10 years old. I always work like half of the lesson on improvisation, because that's that's something that is very essential in their progress in their development towards freedom, to self-confidence. I think that's it's amazing tool that I love to do, but somehow I don't hear it in my music. Yeah, it's interesting that it's in my background, but I don't find it so interesting to propose it to the listener today. If it happens in my music, it's more a collective thing with the band, or it's in the music itself. There's freedom in the form, or you don't always know where it goes. But as such, like singing verse and then improvising after it, it's not present in my music.
Yeah, so for me, no improvisation, no fun. You know, it's so in that sense, it's in everything I do. But I wouldn't, maybe not in the sense of having a scat solo, but more in the sense of having the freedom to do unexpected things, or to have unexpected things happen. In the band, or in the music itself, so that it could take I mean, I think that it for me it's a lot of fun to play with musicians if things can take a completely unexpected turn. But that doesn't happen. I mean, mostly things are sort of going sort of in the same way, but then they can develop through like when you are playing several concerts, things can develop into a direction, and then a song maybe in the after 5 concerts sounds really different. Then so that, I think, for me, that is also improvisation, that it can just, or that it can be variation, or doing a little even when I sang classical in music, that there is everything is like really fixed, and for me it was a kind of struggle to find the moment of improvising somehow, and I always did, but it would be sometimes in a really small corner. But there's always it's more about freedom, about artistic freedom, to be able to do your thing, you know. And that, so in that sense, I take improvisation it's a very wide definition, and not so much as oh, I have this chord scheme that I have to now improvise over 75 chords or something.
Yeah,
could be fun, but nobody's really waiting for it. I mean, except if you play like in a jazz club and you're gonna improvise on Lullaby of Birdland or something. Again, it can be fun, but it's not what I do in my life anymore. Does that make sense?
yes, absolutely.
Completely. For me, I think I'm also more concerned with freedom of interpretation, freedom of connection with the other musicians, and how do we play a song on that day, and the communication, the nonverbal communication in playing. I think improvising in the traditional sense, always this word that we have in school, I personally have a bit of a traumatic experience with it. I think it's a traumatic thing as a singer to be put on the spot when you're studying, and it's like, okay, now improvise. And a lot of instrumentalists have the tools of the keys, and we have to hear everything. So it's I think the level of difficulty as a vocal improviser from the get-go is much more demanding and difficult, I find. And I don't know, I can speak for myself, but maybe you share this experience to be in situations where you're in jam sessions or in places where the voice in a way is can be a very dominant instrument, because when you use the voice and you say words and you sing, then everybody's listening to you. But at the same time, it's a very, it's also really not dominant, because you cannot, it's hard to really influence where the harmony is going just by the voice, because all the other instruments are more dominant in that way. So it's very difficult to do. And I think it really quickly, for me, it has an aesthetic thing that I find a bit too nerdy or intellectual. Maybe it's just my trauma speaking, I don't know. But I'm not such a big fan of vocal improvising, unless if it's in a, okay, I want to study harmony kind of approach. And then I learn how to improvise because it helps me to perfect myself with harmony. But it's not something I would propose on stage. I think I'm more concerned, like I said, with freedom of interpretation, and maybe also actually more free improvisation for me is more fun. Finding soundscape sounds with others, and have propositions that can balance or not, but then not stuck in this aesthetic of chord changes and scat stuff. That was very cool when people like Ella did it, because it was so fresh at the time. It's something that's what's fun when you listen to Ella improvise, is that or Betty Carter or other great improvisers from the past, because you can tell it's a new language and it's very fresh. And I feel like in school we're learning something that was fresh in the past, and then it sounds a bit off for me. But you don't have to share my point of view.
But thanks to talk about it, because it's true that it's there's no obligation about improvising, and it's also completely different to improvise with a voice than with an instrument. So it's true that it's another point of view and another approach.
Some people do it great. Like it's like rap, no? It's not for me. Some people do it and it sounds amazing, but yeah.
I think even with the people that you named, when you look at the albums they released, I mean, if you look at, for example, let's say my first big idol in jazz was Ella, and I bought about anything that could be bought from her. And actually, the majority of albums that she released were without scat.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think it strikes me as a decision, a producer's decision. You know, just record the beautiful Gershwin songs in 5 albums, but don't scat a note, because that's not what people want to hear, or something. Wasn't necessarily. I think live, she always scattered. And some of the singers even like pretended. I had the feeling that sometimes when she had like there's one live recording, I think from her or from Sarah, I don't remember, Pablo, records came out. She just pretended to have forgotten the lyrics, so she had to scat. Sorry,
It's her. But she really so much loved to improvise. It's really obvious that she's the queen. Talking about improvisation. So so let's talk about your instrument, which is voice. What is your relationship with your voice, and how do you work on your voice and on your sound? And do you feel that your voice is changing with time? And do you have like kind of vocal hygiene or something? So it's a broad question.
I practice singing Bach suites for a cello. It's kind of like my routine that I do on a weekly basis for sure. And it's great because I find it helps me work many different aspects at the same time, which is harmony, technique, pitch, and it's just beautiful music to practice. It's like doing yoga for me. So I would say that's really like the thing I come back to. And then I have my routine as far as like breathing, sound, and making sure I'm not straining my voice. Teaching is great for that because it also helps you by helping other people understand their technique. You're kind of defining stuff for yourself. So that also helps a lot in my technique to be teaching to others. I don't know. Maybe more stuff is going to show up, but you guys can chip in.
Yeah, I don't have like a this daily or weekly training system. I love also singing the sonnets from time to time. Yeah, and this what you say from when you teach. I teach 2 days a week, and it really helps you also, yeah, to get to know your strengths and your weaknesses, and as you have to define the voice, the instrument, which is so interesting because even though you know some techniques, some methods, you still keep on discovering things. I think the rest of our lives, because we have this hidden instrument. Although we know the anatomy of it, it's still like the way you can explain it to somebody and help you keep on discovering things about the voice. Always, yeah. Like my personal experience is also like when I was really into this, like training my voice, flexibility, articulation, going like I had this period in my life that I wanted to sing so fast, like like as fast as possible, and really, and then I at one point I noticed I was improvising or something, and I was just doing so many quick crazy things, and I was thinking like, what's the point of this? Like, what do I actually want to say? So what I want to say is that for me it was an eye-opener to really think like, okay, what do I want to express, and not like what do I really want to hear, and no, that's not the right way to say, but I think you train the things that you want to express. If you hear a lot of fast stuff and you want to sing that, then at those moments I worked flexibility and articulation and power and things. But that's also like, yeah, in the process sometimes you hear more simple things and then you go with that. It's really like it's like a changing all the time, like waves. And so I think it's important to be in alignment, but what do you want to express? And then work on those things that you can express the things that you hear, that you are able to sing what you want to express harmonically. Yeah.
So when I was a student, I had a sort of second subject or technical lesson was classical singing, and that was great. I loved it, but it never. I always waited for the moment where my classical singing lessons or knowledge or technique would sort of connect to my jazz or to my jazz singing or whatever you want to call it, and it just never happened. So I was a little bit desperate because there was a sort of a branch of music where my technique was quite okay, but when I sang my own music, I still sounded not so much different from when I started, to take voice lessons at all. So so I got into, I met a teacher after my conservatory studies who is teaching sound-oriented singing in the it's called Lichtenberg.
Yeah.
And that was for me really a very important moment. And it stuck with me. And I also teach that way when I talk about singing technique, and it's maybe the shortest way to make like a resume is to say it's not motoric. So I stopped going from what my body, thinking about what my body has to do to sing right, and to going more about what also Anu said, to see what I want to hear, what sound do I want to hear, and not so much in the sense of like I want to sound like this or that singer, but more in the sense of what is the sound of my voice, and what are so it was going away a little bit from the basic note oriented thing, more into the upper tone or harmonics kind of spectrum, but very high up, so that we're talking about brilliance, we're talking about carrying the sound, and about richness of sound much more, so that it's and then from there on, so that would be, let's say, my daily hygiene of just sort of asking my ears, what do I hear, what is it I perceive, where does it feel something, and so in that sense get in contact with my body and with my voice, so it's establishing a sort of communication between the note sound that comes out and goes in, and the perception of it more. And then in that sense, I think then the way is also open to go to any kind of sound that that can be very, experimental or whatever, but then it's much more an acoustic. I think for me, singing technique became more something that is connected to acoustic perception or perception in general, and has moved away from manipulation and having to do certain things in order to get a certain effect.
Nice.
Super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it, except if someone wants to add something.
No, you asked if our voices changed with time.
Yeah.
I had to say my voice definitely changed with time. Yeah, for sure. I don't know what it is, if it's biological, physical, or emotional of who I am today, or the stuff I've been through. I don't know, but definitely my voice is not the same. But then
how did it change?
It's also how I feel with my voice. Maybe people are going to say, "Oh, you sound exactly the same as." I think it was yesterday. I went back. I gave a workshop in the high school that I used to be in when I was 17, and I saw my old Spanish teacher. I mean, she's not old, but I mean, my Spanish teacher from back in the day. And the first thing she told me was, "Wow, you have the same voice," and I haven't seen her in 20 years. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's my perception of my voice that thinks it's evolving, and then people say that you sound the same.
Yeah, I definitely think that our voices change. I mean, the voice it's so much connected to our body, and everything that we are experiencing through the childhood, teenage years, and all. I think it's all part of kind of a bigger process, because voice is very special instrument, because of this fact that it's so connected to the body. So it means it's also connected to our traumas and whatever we carry, whatever we develop during our lives, and also the liberation of it, I think, happens through the voice. It definitely
it changes.
It definitely changes. Yes. Yeah.
Well, concerning my voice, it's so obvious that my voice has changed a lot, like really a lot. So I'm just interested in knowing if it's a general thing for everyone or not.
I'm guessing as a women singer, when you have children also, does your voice change after giving birth? Is it something or?
It's
For me, definitely.
I think that as a blah blah. I think that it's as a woman, you are constantly in the grip of hormones changing, you know, all the time, and yes, so yeah, the whole body, you know, balance is constantly in a change of flux. And I guess that's for everybody, but I think for women it might be a bit more. So in that sense, yeah, it changes and it doesn't change. I think it's both, you know, it does change physically. It always changes, but acoustics don't change in a way. So I can also imagine, I mean, that your former teacher recognizes you by your voice until and your voice has grown, you know, and it's nice as we get older that is something that's still growing, right? I mean,
but it could be different from one person to the other one. I mean, if you listen to Norma Winstone or if you listen to Joni Mitchell, you can really hear that. I mean, Norma Winstone still has exactly the same voice, and Joni Mitchell is so different now that she used to be. Yeah, like she's one octave lower. No, I'm exaggerating, but it's so different.
Yeah.
So,
but yet very, very nice.
Absolutely, completely.
Very, very nice.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Also these changes.
I wonder what classical singers would say, you know, if you meant, because once you're a soprano, you're supposed to be a soprano for the rest of your life.
That's what you're casted
right?
as in all your shows. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, that was it. Thank you. Thanks a lot. It was so interesting to have your points of view and to discuss together and to know a bit more about you, your music, your voice, your feelings, the way you see you go into music, and it's really super generous, and I really, really appreciate. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for the invitation, Barbara.
And thank you for the great research. I love to check out the videos and the interviews of all different singers. This is very, very precious.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It's great. It feels like shall we do it again next week? You know.